Welcome back to episode 4 of the Compound Growth Podcast. This is a podcast that we like to do as an educational segment to people getting started after college and getting into their first couple jobs, maybe starting on a long-term career. We really just want to give the building blocks to investing and getting your finances set up correctly to set you up for success over the long term.
Yep. So with that being said, if you watch the first 3 episodes, we talked about, the basics of what is compound growth. We talked about different types of 401ks and their features. And then last episode, we went into stocks, ETFs, mutual funds. So some of those different investment vehicles. So today we want to talk about kind of like a mock scenario of, say, a 26-year-old that, they're making about $100,000 a year. Usually at that point in life is whenever you want to start looking for a house. So what does that look like with the income that you're bringing in? Where is that going, or where should it be going? And kind of getting that baseline right for, whatever time frame that might be that you're looking at to buy this house.
Yeah, for a lot of people, especially in your first, 5 to 7 years out of college, when you start to get close to or surpassing that $100,000 salary, this is the most money that you have ever made in your life. And it can feel like a lot of excess capital that you have at your disposal. And if you don't treat that income coming in correctly, then it can quickly feel like you have no idea where this money is going, and there's dollars flowing everywhere for the various aspects of your life. So we want to break it down and just give some general guidelines as to where this money would be best served.
Yeah, I would say, majority of the time, if I'm just, hanging out with the guys our age, or, we have a new client that walks through the door, the main questions that they have is, hey, I'm looking to buy a house. I'm bringing in this much in income. It's sitting in a checking or savings account, and it's really built up over the last few years, and they really don't know what to do with it. So that's kind of what we want to go through here is, what do those building blocks look like? What's a time frame? When can you expect to buy a house, and how much do you really need to buy the house? So the mock scenario that we're going to run through is we have a 26-year-old. He's making $100,000 a year. And so that would be, close to $75,000 after tax or net. So what does that look like moving forward? So if you're bringing in $70,000 after tax per year, that's about $5,800 per month that you're bringing in after tax or net. So, what do you do with that? Where do you start? What we've run into, the best scenario is you want to be putting about 15 to 20% away out of that 5,800 that you're bringing in towards a retirement account, whether that's your 401k or, a Roth IRA, a traditional IRA. I think we can both agree that, we've talked about it in previous episodes, but Roth is probably the way to go with those funds. So since we're talking about after-tax numbers, just taking, 15% right off the top of that 5,800 or $70,000 after tax and sticking that away for your retirement and start building that up.
Yep. And if you have questions on those retirement accounts, specifically the 401k, check out our second episode of Compound Growth and you'll learn all about that. So once you have those dollars, the 15% of your net income flowing to retirement accounts for retirement savings, you are going to be left with about $60,000 a year. That is about $5,000 per month. So now, where does this $5,000 a month that is going to be going into your bank account go? For starters, if you are currently renting, living in an apartment or a townhome, you are looking at, we live in Pennsylvania, but you're looking at about $2,000 a month just going toward living expenses, and that probably encapsulates some of the utilities, Wi-Fi, electric, etc. So after that $2,000 leaves, now you are left with $3,000. So just continuing to work backwards, where does this $3,000 go now?
Yep. So now that you're at $3,000, let's say you're spending roughly $1,500 per month on discretionary spending. So that's realistically, after you have your rent, then you just have gas and food. That's pretty much it on top of, rent, because your utilities are probably all wrapped into that. So
Yeah,
I
any
don't think
other
there's,
activities that you are taking part in, gym memberships, things like that,
yep.
which we highly encourage.
Yep. Car payment as well. Yeah, I think the only thing that you might have would be, say, student loan payments on top of that, which of course will fluctuate for everybody. For this instance, we'll assume no student loans, which would leave you with $1,500 a month. So in this case, if you do have a student loan, you can take that right off the top of that 1,500 and see what you're left net with. But in this scenario, you have $1,500 left, and that is pure savings. So at this point, you've paid for rent, you're putting away in your retirement account, which is really important early on because that's how it's going to have the most time to grow. So if you circle back to episode number 1, compound growth, it's really important to get that in as early as possible. So we factored that in. We're factoring in your rent, your expenses. So now you have a true savings of after-tax money of $1,500. And that's what starts going towards the house then. And, important as well, building up an emergency fund prior to moving into a house, because you don't want to spend everything that you have on a down payment, or a down payment and furniture is another thing that you have to think of before you actually move in, and then you have nothing. And we've seen it a million times personally. Whenever you move into a house, there's going to be things to fix up. There's going to be stuff that you want to do. There's going to be things that just go wrong that you don't expect. So you want to have something built up, ready to go for whenever those things do happen, so that you're not just, standing there needing to take out a loan, or wondering, how am I even going to afford this now? You don't want to be strapped once you do get the house and you reach that goal to then run into another roadblock. You want to have your emergency fund ready to go, so that whenever those things do go wrong, and probably will, you have the money there just to cover it.
Yeah, $1,500 a month is $18,000 a year. That is after tax savings. And now, where's the best place to put that money? Your checking account is not the right answer. Unless you have a bank that is offering a really good high yield savings account, then that may be the right answer. But in general, you're going to want to look at money markets. Currently, the rates on those are between 3.5%, 3.7%, which is pretty good, and we would recommend leaving it in something of that nature. Now, if money market rates decline, now you may want to base a timeline and get a good CD that's paying somewhere around 3%. If you're looking at a house 2 years out, maybe you buy a 12-month CD and then roll it. Maybe you look at 18 months, etc. But you're going to want to find a place that you are earning a fair amount of interest on, because most checking accounts, they're going to give you 1% or less on your money. And if it's just going to be sitting there waiting until the day that you find that perfect house, you're going to want to have it earning interest.
Yep. And, we run into also, waiters, waitresses that are sitting on, just pure cash. You're really losing money just sitting on cash, because you're not earning a dime and it's not keeping up with inflation. So you want to at least get it in something. And circling back around to money markets, CDs, if you don't know what a money market is, think of it just like a CD, but it's fully liquid. You can access it whenever you want. So that's, in our eyes, pretty much ideal for, because you don't know when you're going to find that perfect house to jump on. If your money's locked up in a CD, you don't want to have to pay some sort of penalty to get that out just to go buy this house. So the closer you get to that timeline of actually, buying the house, then you really want to keep everything liquid, but still earning something along the lines of, somewhere between 3 and 4%, whether it is, a money market or early on a CD as well. So.
Yeah, and the great thing is that if your plans change or you do want to pivot, you have this backboard here of savings, let's call it $18,000 a year, that now you can start moving some of that money into the market, buying stocks, buying mutual funds, ETFs, etc. Maybe taking a little bit more risk with that money if you do have a lot built up. Maybe the housing market becomes a little cheaper. Maybe you don't need to have as much saved up, and you can start peeling some of those savings away, taking a little bit more risk and getting it into the market.
Yep. So circling back around to the emergency fund, how much do you really, think is a good amount to have saved up before you would go move into a house, or just in general to have in, checking, savings, money market, something fully liquid? Usually 3 to 6 months worth of expenses is the answer that you're looking for. So that way, if anything were to happen, if say you don't have the income that you need, you lose your job, whatever happens, you can continue living life as you would for 3 to 6 months. And that's why you're looking for a new job, looking for that income replacement. But your whole world doesn't stop. You're not going to try and sell your vehicle or pawn your things off just to make it by. You can continue life as usual for 3 to 6 months. And usually that should be long enough to get you back on your feet, figure out a longer term solution.
Yeah, and if this is your first home purchase, you are probably buying something like a fixer-upper. Maybe it doesn't need a ton of structural work, but cosmetically, you may want to repaint, you may want to redo the floors, you may want to put a new bathroom in. So there are a lot of things that come up that you may want to have savings built up for. Now, tapping into your emergency fund for that is one way to do it, but then you'll need to quickly build that back up. When you do move into that new house, it's very exciting. It's great. You have the new house, but it gets old relatively quickly, and then you want to start updating things. So you're going to have the capital to do so, or be saving along the way to then put into these projects that you may want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think of, my emergency fund as money there. It is strictly for an emergency. That's not, a vacation for next year. That's not for even home renovations. I would say that's for, hey, the toilet stopped working. We need another toilet. Or we just moved in and now the roof needs done. That's an emergency. Anything that you can plan for, I don't consider that an emergency. I think that would be considered savings on top of your emergency fund, because that's coming up. You can plan for it. The emergency fund is strictly for the unplanned items that might come up.
Yeah, and overall, what we're talking about here today is not rocket science. It's not proprietary. It's not anything that you wouldn't be able to figure out yourself. Overall, it is really just creating a budget, which is the best thing to do when you have any amount of income coming in. You would even tell a 16-year-old this with a summer job: create a budget, figure out how much is coming in, figure out where money needs to go out, and then back into a number of what you can save. And then once you do that, then you have your pot of discretionary income that you can use for fun, for vacations, for different things that you want to do. So overall, this is really just about budgeting and knowing the numbers for yourself. If you don't know what's coming in and you don't know what's going out, this is an impossible equation to figure out. So the first thing that you want to do, grab a pen and paper and start writing things down.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a 26-year-old making $100,000 in this boat out there, but odds are your situation is, a little bit different, maybe a lot different. But the overall goal is get an idea of, like Mike said, what's coming in, what's going out. You might realize you're spending X amount of dollars on something that you really shouldn't be each month. And then you can get that out of the way. So yeah, knowing what's coming in, going out puts you in a good position to plan for the future.
Yeah, you see all of these different apps and commercials on Rocket Money, or new apps that track your budgets and look at subscriptions that you haven't been using for 6 months. You really don't need to pay for something like that. What you need to do is, again, grab a pen and paper and start writing everything that you have coming in and everything that you have going out, and you'll be able to figure it out yourself pretty quickly.
Yeah, pen and paper is a good way to do it. Excel, you don't need to pay for some crazy budgeting tool. You could just plug your numbers in Excel, sum it up, see what your expenses are, what your income is, how much is going towards your 401k or whatever type of savings. And there you go. You have your monthly budget, and you can start planning out for the future to reach whatever that goal might be. And, maybe this is somebody down the line in life as well, and their goal isn't to buy a house, but, maybe buy a boat or something different. It goes the same way. You can use this for anything. Pretty much budgeting opens those doors to figure out what can you be spending and how do you get there.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I really love the theme of this podcast, where we tie in exercise and fitness is because a lot of this all does come back to discipline. When you have a workout regimen or you're trying to hit a fitness goal, obviously that takes a lot of discipline and consistency to meet that goal. This is the exact same way. When you figure out the numbers of where money's coming in and where it's going out, you're going to find a shortfall, or you're going to find the area where you need to budget and save. And that really does take discipline. The same as the gym, the same as any goal, is consistency over time to meet that goal. If you write out a budget and you say you're going to save $1,500 a month and then you do it for 3 months and quit, you're not going to be looking at buying a house anytime soon. So discipline and consistency, it applies to all facets of life. Yeah, so I just think that's a great symmetry between this and the fitness part of it.
That speaking of, health and fitness and keeping track of, how much you're spending, that carries right over to, fitness as far as like calorie intake, that sort of stuff. If you're somebody that is really into fitness and, maybe you're trying to slim down, you're trying to lose weight, trying to cut or gain weight, gain muscle, and you're keeping track of, your protein intake, that's something that, I've been doing recently for about the last 3 weeks, is actually trying to keep track of my calories. This is something that I've maybe done one other time for about a month. Last episode, I joked that I'm not the guy to talk to for a, what's
Diet.
the word? Yeah, diet. Yeah, for a diet. So since that episode, I just started doing this.
Brody doesn't even know the word for diet.
No,
So
it's not in my vocabulary, but yeah, keeping track of calories. So I've been trying to take in like 1,500 to 2,000 calories a day between like chicken, rice, just, lean foods, and trying to, cut down over a month just to see what I could actually do. So I'm down like 6 pounds so far in the last couple of weeks. So I'm actually, seeing some good results, I would say. But the biggest thing for me is, keeping my weight up at the gym as far as what I'm actually moving, doing bench press. Am I bench pressing the same weight? Does it feel the same? Whenever I'm doing curls, does it feel the same? So slimming down, cutting out the fat, but still keeping my muscle or gaining muscle mass. So that's just something, that kind of carries over to what we're talking about financially, over to my life personally as well in the fitness region.
yeah, overall, I would say to sum this podcast up is keep it simple. Figure out the numbers, figure out the numbers that you need to meet certain goals, like buying a home. And for the fitness side of it, if you want to lose weight, the equation there is simple as well. Eat less, move more.
Yeah, you really don't have to overcomplicate it. Work out more, eat less calories, take in protein, and, you'll reach your goals. It's just a matter of, what's the time period to get there. But it's all about the equation and the numbers that get there.
Yep. The laws of numbers don't change, and the laws of thermodynamics don't either. So just keep it simple.
Yep. Thank you for tuning in to episode 4 of Compound Growth. Hope you learned a little bit of something about budgeting. If somebody is in the boat of 26 years old, making $100,000 a year saving towards that house, but that carries over into, pretty much any goal that you want to reach financially in life. So use this, change the numbers around, build out an Excel sheet, write everything down as to what you're spending, what you're bringing in, and hopefully you can reach your goals.
Yeah. Save that money, let it compound in interest, and you'll be able to meet your goals. Just be disciplined, be consistent, and thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you.